All right, let's get started. I'm going to go through the second half of Chapter 18's lecture notes for Intermediate 2. I'm picking up right where we left off at participating versus non-participating preferred stock. So this is a new concept for us. So preferred stock in general is a new concept for us. So preferred stock, again, to refresh, is when they have preferential treatment in a certain category. Usually that preferential treatment relates to dividends and the payment of dividends. So participating says that you can receive more than your regular dividend amount. Non-participating means you can't. So basically, I should probably do cumulative versus non-cumulative first. Cumulative means that as the years pass, if a dividend is not paid, it accumulates. So preferred stock that has a preferential treatment with dividends will have a stated dividend rate. And so those dividends can be cumulative or non-cumulative. The most common is cumulative. And what that means is that as the dividends, if a year passes and they don't pay a dividend, then the next year, basically you kind of owe them 2 years of dividends. Now remember, dividends don't ever have to be paid. So it's completely optional on whether dividends are paid or not. But if dividends are paid, the preferred stockholders get their dividends first before the common stockholders. And if it's cumulative, that means that all of the previous stockholder dividends for preferred stock have to be paid before the common stockholders can get anything. So cumulative, and then participating versus non-participating. Most commonly, it's non-participating, meaning you get what you get and you don't get any more. So you get the stated rate, but you don't get anything in excess of that. So what it means is preferred stockholders get their dividends first, but they don't get any extra. So they only get their stated rate and they're not going to get anything beyond that. So common stockholders have to wait for the preferred stockholders to get their dividends before they get any, but they get all of the leftover. So common stockholder, more risky, you may never get any dividends, but you also get, with more risk and more reward, potentially more dividends. So let's go ahead and let's do an example of this. So Belson Corporation has 10,000 common shareholders and 5,000 preferred shareholders. The preferred stock has a $5 dividend rate. So a $5 dividend rate. 2 years of dividends are currently in arrears. This is a new word for us, arrears. It's kind of a funny word, but what it means is back pay. All right. So back dividends. So currently we owe stockholder dividends for the last 2 years. We haven't paid any. Now, when I say owe, I use that word reluctantly because that makes you think liability. And remember, you never have to pay dividends, but these are going to accumulate and accumulate until we eventually pay a dividend of some kind. And then we have to take care of our arrears before we can take care of current year dividends. So if the preferred stock is cumulative, that means that the dividends and arrears is a thing. If preferred stock is non-cumulative, that means that you don't keep track of it and accumulate after many years. And non-participating means they only get their stated amount. They get what they get and they don't throw a fit. That's right, Lauren. So Bilson has $155,000 to distribute in the form of dividends. So we have $155,000 worth to give out. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to take care of our preferred dividends first. And then if we have any money left over, then we'll give it to the common shareholders. So the first thing we kind of have to figure out is how much money we need to give as dividends. So to the preferred stockholders. So there's 10,000 common shareholders, but there's 5,000 preferred stockholders. And each one of them gets a $5 dividend. So what we're going to do is we need to give them 2 years of arrears before we work in the current year. So doesn't that look like 5 times 5 is $25,000 times 2 years? I think we've got to give $50,000 to the preferred stockholders first. So I think there might be something underneath here. Let's go ahead and see what's there. What's the what? Hulu password? Checking your old messages because I've sent it to you before. Can you go check on Tor? I'm making a video, so okay, I can't give you a Hulu password right now. So 5,000 times 5 is $25,000 in dividends times 2 years. So we're going to give, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take care of our arrears by giving $50,000 to our preferred stockholders. So that means we've given out $50,000. Then we need to give out the regular stockholder dividend. So now we need to look at the current year. And the first thing we have to do is take care of our preferred stockholders. So now we've given out 25. So we've given out 75,000. And so now the rest of the money will go to the common stockholders. So the common stockholders, we've given out a total of 75 already. So if we take 155 minus 75, we're going to give $80,000 to the common stockholders for a total of 155,000 distributed. So basically what we're going to do is when we decide to give out dividends of 155,000, then we say, all right, what do we got to do? Who's going to get it? The preferred stockholders or the common stockholders? Take care of your arrears first, then the current year, and then the rest of the money goes to the common stockholders. So one of the things that we do pretty regularly is we calculate the per share dividend, because remember, some people might own 1 share and some people might own 10, and we've got to figure out how we're going to do that. So we've got total dividends paid here of 75,000, and those are going to get paid to 5,000 different shareholders. So 75 divided by 5 should be 15. So we are going to give $15 per share to the preferred stockholders. Now this makes sense because we owed them 2 years in arrears at $5 a year, $10, plus the current year, 5 more. And so then the common stockholders, they get a total of 80,000, but there's 10,000 of them. So 10,000 common shareholders are going to get 80,000 in total. So 80,000 divided by 10 is $8 per share. So if Lauren owns 3 shares, we'll mail her 24 bucks. If Tor owns 2 shares of preferred stock, we're going to mail him 30 bucks. If Andrew owns 5 shares of common stock, we would send him $40. If I own 1 share of preferred stock, they would send me $15. So this is how they decide who gets what when. So let's do another example. Okay, Masalas Merchandising has 10,000 shares of $20 par value common stock and 4,000 shares of $2 cumulative non-participating $5 par value preferred stock. That was a mouthful. Okay, so $2 cumulative, okay, 4,000 shares of $2 cumulative non-participating $5 par value preferred stock. Now, I don't care about the par value. That's just how we determine how much goes in the preferred stock account versus the paid in capital and excess of par account. But I've got 4,000 shares and it's $2 per share. So see, it says $2 cumulative non-participating. Cumulative meaning we got to take care of arrears. Non-participating means they get what they get and they don't throw a fit. All right. So during the following years, we give money out. In year 1, we give 6. In year 2, 7. Year 3, no dividends. Year 4, 26. And year 5, 36. Calculate dividends per share for each year. All right. That's a big old table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and figure out how I'm going to give out my dividends. So I went ahead and created this table. You can do this any way you want. You don't have to make a table, but I need to give out $6,000 in the first year, and I have to figure out who I'm going to give it to. So the first thing I would probably do is I would go ahead and calculate how much I should be giving my preferred stockholders. Preferred stockholders get $2 per share times 4,000 shares. So they should be getting $8,000. Now, should is kind of a strong word. If we pay dividends, then we would give them $8,000. So what we would literally do is we would, in the first year, if we give out $6,000, all of it needs to go to the preferred stockholders, and we're left with $2,000 in arrears. Okay? So basically, I wish I had $8,000 to give out, and then I could take care of my preferred stockholders, but I can't right now because I don't have enough. So I can give them 6, and I still kind of owe them 2. And again, I use the word owe reluctantly, but you get the idea. So the next year, the first thing I need to do is I need to give them $2,000 in arrears. And then I need to give them $5,000 for current year because I have $7,000 to give out. And first I have to take care of my arrears. And then I would need to give them 8, but I only gave them 5 for the current year. So this year, I wish I had 8, but I only had 6, so I have 2 in arrears. Got to take care of the arrears first, then move to the current year, I can only give them 5, so I still owe them 3. Don't worry, I'll take care of the other columns later. One thing to point out though is the common shareholders haven't gotten anything yet. No money for them. Because we haven't figured out how to take care of our preferred stockholders yet, and they get preferential treatment. So each year, I should be giving them 8. I don't have enough. I give them what I can, and it accumulates because it's cumulative. So the next year, I have no money to give. So now I have 3,000 in arrears and another 8,000. So now I have 11,000 in arrears because I still owe them 3 from before and another 8 for this year. In year 4, I'm going to give them 11,000 to take care of arrears. Then I'm supposed to give them 8,000 each year, so I'll give them 8,000 for the current year. So I can put current year here too. So looks like I gave them 19,000, but I still have money left over. So finally, our common stockholders are going to get some money. So I had 26,000 to distribute. I had to take care of my arrears first, and then I gave them their current year. That's 19. So that leaves us with 7. And my arrears are 0. I don't owe any. So the next year I got 36,000 to give out. All I need to give them is 8,000. They get what they get. That's right. Okay, I'm making a video. I'm making a video, darling. Okay, so I gave out 8. I had 36 to give though, so 36 minus 8, I should be able to do that in my head, but I'm not trusting myself, is 28,000 here. And my arrears are 0. So basically this goes ahead and details out exactly how I'm gonna pay out my dividends. Now the dividend per share is just the 6,000 divided by 4 and the 0 divided by 10,000. So basically how much I'm giving each shareholder. So I waited on getting the per share stuff. So I'd take 6,000 divided by 4,000, and 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. So I would give $1.50 per share here. Here I'm going to give them 7,000 divided by 4. So that's $1.75 per year or per share. None here. Here I'm giving them 19,000. 4.75. So it says dividend per share. So just take your dividends and divide by the number of shares. So 4.75 per share. And then here 8 divided by 4 is just $2 per share. So in an ideal world, I would have at least $2 a share to give to all of my preferred stockholders. So I'd have at least 8,000 to give out every year. But every year is different based on how much money we make and how much money we can distribute. So this is where we ended up. Over here, there's 10,000 common shareholders. So they get nothing those first 3 years, and then they get $7,000 finally in year 3. $7,000 divided by 10,000 shares is 70 cents per share. Poor common stockholders. The next year, though, they get 28,000 over 10,000 shares. So that's $2.80 per share. So notice that in year 5, they ended up getting more than the preferred stockholders. So they waited patiently, and eventually they got 28,000 divided by 10,000 shares, and they actually did a good job. So down here, I just kind of explained. So we should be paying our preferred stockholders $2 a share times 4,000 shares. All the rest of the money goes to common stockholders. To calculate dividends per share, you take dividends divided by the number of shares. For example, year 1, 6 over 4. So I'm just kind of showing my work. And then dividends and arrears are paid because the stock is cumulative. If the stock was not cumulative, we would not pay the arrears. We just wouldn't even accumulate it. Okay, so next thing here is just some conversation. Oh, here, this is the last thing. We should be paying our preferred stockholders. This is nothing. So I had another example that I had written, but I didn't use it. So, okay, so this is the different sections of total stockholder equity. So we have paid in capital, that's money from owners, retained earnings, and then we reduce it by treasury stock because this is a contra asset. So let's talk about the concept of a stock split. A stock split is when a share of stock divides into 2 or more shares. So we kind of talked about this last time, but a 2-for-1 stock split, that would mean that if I owned 10 shares, then when they announced that they did a stock split, all of a sudden I own 20. So what that means is that now there's twice the number of shares out in the market. And so the basic concepts of supply and demand would indicate that if you double the supply, the demand will drop. And so the price will start dropping pretty quickly when you do a stock split. So then what it would literally do is, like, sometimes your stock price just gets too high. So like as an example, if you went out and looked at Amazon stock and let's say it's selling at $700 a share, I totally made that up because I have no idea what it's selling for. But that means if one person wanted to buy one share of stock, they'd have to come up with $700. And so maybe they decide that that stock price is too high and they want to bring it down, but they don't want to be worth less. And so they just double the number of shares out there and the stock price should follow suit and kind of drop to $3.50 a share. So a 2-for-1 stock split, what happens is the par value is going to change. So basically, if the stock was $20 par value and you do a 2-for-1 stock split, the new par value is going to be 10. And so then instead of having 10,000 shares out there, now you have 20. And theoretically, the market price, if stock was currently selling for $100 a share, would drop to about 50. So, and then there's some other examples here, like a 4-for-1 would just mean you divide it by 4 and you times it by 4 and you divide it by 4. So then I did something really weird, like a 5-for-2. So a 5-for-2 would mean that you would divide it by 5 and then take it times 2. So you would take 20 divided by 5 is 4 times 2. So you do 10,000 times 2 divided by 5. And so anyway, yeah, I don't know. You're never gonna have to do one of those, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so let's talk about dividends a little bit. So on dividends, usually we pay cash dividends. And so this is an easy concept usually. And so basically what happens is there are 3 important dates in relation to dividends. There's the date of declaration, the date of payment, the date of declaration, the date of record, and the date of payment. The date of declaration is the day that the board of directors or the board of trustees or whatever announces that they're doing a dividend. And so they would make a statement like, we, the board of directors of Barnes Incorporated, will pay a common stock dividend. So they're announcing this on January 15th to stockholders of record on the 31st, payable on February 15th. So this is the date of declaration. That's the day they announce it. The date of record, this is the day that they actually look to see who owns the stock to who gets the dividend. So whoever owns the stock on the close of business on January 31 gets the dividend. So if I wasn't paying attention and I didn't realize a dividend was coming, and I decided to sell my shares of stock to Tor on January 30th, then what that would mean is Tor would get the dividend because he owned it on January 31 and I wouldn't get a dividend. So, and then the actual checks get mailed out or deposited or whatever, directly deposited on February 15th. So Barnes has 25,000 shares authorized, 10,000 issued, and 8,000 outstanding. So what this means is at some point, 10,000 shares have been out in the market, but currently only 8,000 shares are in the market. So we must have 2,000 treasury shares that we are holding within our business. So we removed 2,000 shares from the market. So we only pay dividends on outstanding shares. We do not pay dividends to ourselves. Okay, so we can't like buy all the stock out of the market and pay ourselves a dividend. That would not make sense. And that's not, GAAP doesn't allow that because it allows you to manipulate your own records. So date of declaration is the day it becomes a liability. And so the journal entry for that is just dividend and dividend payable. And it's going to be on the 8,000 shares. And it's a 25-cent per share dividend. So 8,000 times 0.25 should be 2,000. So we just debit dividends and credit dividends payable. Now, sometimes in your book, and I don't like to do this, but we can, you could also just do retained earnings instead if you don't have a dividend account. So the date of record, no journal entry. That's just the date that on the close of business on January 31, we're like, who do we owe money to? Okay. And so we just write down their names. And then the date of payment is the day you actually mail out the checks. And so you just debit dividends payable and credit cash. All right. So stock dividends are when you don't necessarily give them money. You're not giving them cash for a dividend. Instead, you're mailing them more shares of stock. So this is additional shares of stock given to the current owners. So if I did a 10% stock dividend and Lauren owned 100 shares, I would mail her 10% of 100, or I would mail her 10 shares for free. A lot of times this creates an issue with partial shares, because if Lauren only owns 2 shares, then she would get 0.2 of a share. And so she would get this little partial share. And so it's kind of annoying. So on January 20th, the board of directors of Smith declares a 4% stock dividend on its 50,000 shares of common stock. So the par value of the stock is $10 a share, and the market value is on June 20th is $16 a share. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how many more shares are going to go out into the market. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take 50,000 times 0.04, and that's going to tell us how many shares we're going to throw out into the market. And that's 2,000 new shares. So when we do this journal entry, no cash is coming in. Students always want to use cash when you're issuing shares or whatever, but no cash is coming in. So normally if we issue shares, we debit cash and we credit common stock and PISEP. So instead of debiting cash, we're going to debit dividends. So you can do dividends or retained earnings. So you can do dividends or retained earnings, and then we're going to put the par value in common stock. So the par value of those 2,000 shares, it's a $10 par value, so 20,000 will go here. But the stock is worth 16. So the excess of 6 times 2,000, or 12,000, is going to go here. So the value of our dividend is $32,000. So we only put the par value in the common stock account. Anything excess goes there. So all that's left here, I went ahead and just included this with the solution so you can kind of look through what it would look like if you're paying dividends and those kinds of things. And so this is just an example of that. And then here, let's see if this is filled in. So I'll go ahead and fill this in. Basically, this is all of the equity. This is like a stockholder equity statement. And so this is what we started off with balances in January. When we have net income, it goes in retained earnings, and then dividends reduces it. Here, we ended up giving out some stock dividends. So this is the par value and the excess. Looks like we also gave a property dividend. And so these two combined, why isn't this equal? Oh, we must have given some other kinds of some cash dividends in there too. Up for net income, down for cash dividends. I'm not really sure what's going on with there. I'll have to look a little closer. And then we did a stock split. A stock split does not involve cash. And all we do is increase the number of shares and then reduce PISEP because of the value that we are giving out. So, so basically it changes the par value. It changes the par value. So we have to do some work with common stock. So. All right, so that looks good. If you have questions, let me know. Go ahead and finish the homework for next time. So I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.